Joining us now as part of our ongoing partnership with the Daily Poster, we have David Sirota, founder of Daily Poster. What's your full title? Editor?
Founder and editor.
There we go. Okay. Founder, editor of the Daily Poster, also has a podcast project coming out. Also, by the way, happened to co-produce and co-write a film, no big deal, that has
with Leo DiCaprio
in it. Yeah. But today, David, we wanted to talk to you about a really important piece of reporting that you and your team there, Andrew Perez and Walker Bragman, put out this week. If we can throw that tear sheet up on the screen. Headline says, Congress may let opioid billionaires get legal immunity. Legislation to hold the Sacklers accountable stalls as the Chamber of Commerce begins lobbying on the bill. People who watch this show probably know the Sacklers are behind Purdue Pharma. They were the major villains behind the entire opioid crisis, pushing Oxy on people who really didn't need Oxy, lying about when they knew how addictive it was, and just have been incredibly bad actors here. So there's an effort to actually hold them accountable. They've been pushing to make sure, okay, well, we might come to this settlement and this agreement, but we have to make sure we're not liable for anything ever again, and not just us, but all the people around us, this very large list of people and entities that they want immunity for. Bring us up to speed on what you found here, David.
So that's exactly right. What they want to do is use something called a non-debtor release, which is a technical term that in some courts in bankruptcy, the courts will extend essentially legal immunity to other parties that are not the company itself. So in this case, Purdue Pharma is the Sackler-owned corporation that went into a bankruptcy court. And by the way, these companies can essentially venue shop. They can look for what they believe are the best courts that will give them the best deal. So Purdue goes into a court that is notoriously willing to give corporate folks immunity. It goes into that court, the Purdue company does, and says, we are declaring bankruptcy. And in the process, the Sacklers have said, we will pay out claims, a couple $2 billion worth of claims, in exchange for you, the court, saying that other governmental entities can now or in the future may not hold us accountable. So you've got a bunch of attorney generals, for instance, in individual states who want to sue and go after the Sacklers for damages in their states. And essentially, because of the existing law in this court, the court is allowed to say to state attorneys generals, for instance, you are no longer allowed to hold the Sacklers accountable. And so what the bill in Congress was designed to do was to say, no. You can't have non-debtor releases. Courts cannot just grant legal immunity to in all sorts of parties in these bankruptcy courts. In other words, courts cannot just use the bankruptcy process to shield corporate executives and the like from legal accountability and legal liability. But here's the issue. That bill, which had been moving forward, has now stalled in Congress precisely at the moment that one of the most powerful corporate lobby groups in the country has started lobbying on the bill. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce has started lobbying on the bill. Now, you might ask, what does the Chamber of Commerce, what do they care about this in particular, right? Well, you can understand the implications of this. If companies in general are not allowed to get these releases, it doesn't just affect the Sacklers. It wouldn't just affect the opioid situation. It could hold tons and tons of corporate executives accountable when they try to use the bankruptcy courts to shield themselves. So the Chamber of Commerce has an interest in this kind of legislation. One thing I should say, it's not clear in the lobbying records which side the chamber is lobbying on, but they would not respond to our request for comment on that. And so I think you can put two and two together.
That is an incredible part of this, which is that the Chamber of Commerce element, which is that they have, and I guess explain, why would other big business have interest in getting some of this non-debtor release renewed through Congress and not targeted under the guise of the Sacklers? What interest did they have?
Because if you're a corporate executive at another company and you pull all sorts of shenanigans, and then your company is bankrupted, you want to have the ability to go into bankruptcy court and have the court say, state attorneys generals, local law enforcement officials cannot go after you. You want that power. You want the courts to be able to give you that shield. This legislation would say courts cannot give you that shield. So there is a wider corporate interest in this. But of course, the question is, what's the public interest, right? I mean, we're in a country where we hear in our politics all the time, law and order and hold folks accountable. Not passing this bill essentially is Congress saying we're not going to take action to make sure that wrongdoers are held accountable. And of course, that goes with a series of things that we've seen in this country. I mean, we've talked about before the reporting that we've done on nursing homes and how in the state of New York and other states granted essentially legal immunity to the owners of nursing homes during the pandemic. There's a whole trend of corporate powers that be in politics trying to get shields so that the legal system cannot hold the powerful accountable.
And so where are we in terms of the potential settlement with the Sacklers? Because I know we had covered here how one of them in a court hearing said, hey, I might blow this whole thing up if you don't agree to having this massive immunity for myself, for my family, for all the people who were involved potentially. So where are we in terms of them being granted that immunity and ultimately the settlement being finalized?
I mean, by the way, think about how insane it is that the Sacklers, the billionaire family, seems to be the one calling the shots,
right?
Not law enforcement. They're, we're gonna blow up the deal. It's like you guys were the ones who helped create the opioid epidemic, and you're calling the shots. It's kind of an incredible commentary. Where we are is this: the settlement that was proposed would compel the Sackler family to hand over a couple $2 billion. This is part of the bankruptcy proceedings. Of course, it should be noted that they get to remain a multi-billion-dollar family. I've seen one calculation say that they will essentially earn back on interest and investment the amount of money that they're being compelled in this current settlement to hand over. But in that settlement, you've seen the state of Connecticut, its attorney general object, and you've seen the Biden administration say that it may appeal the settlement. The settlement is now essentially under review at a higher court level. It remains to be seen whether those appeals work. Congress has a chance that it could still technically intervene. But as we've discussed, the bill that would be a kind of intervention in this remains stalled.
And finally, David, on the chamber in general, they've been in the news a lot lately because they've had a long-standing position of basically exclusively backing Republicans. They've broken with that recently. That has very much upset the Republican caucus. But what does that do, if anything, in terms of their power in Washington? What does it say about the Democratic Party that the Chamber of Commerce now feels like maybe they have some good allies over there?
I think it says it's not very good what it says about the Democratic Party. I mean, you've seen, as an example, I flagged this on Twitter yesterday. The Chamber of Commerce has on its website, it is boasting that it has funneled money to Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. That is literally on the Chamber of Commerce's website. So what it says is that the Chamber of Commerce sees an opportunity to continue dominating Washington and fronting for a corporate agenda. It sees an opportunity inside the Democratic Party. I don't want to say that there's a full shift here. I mean, the Chamber of Commerce is still very much wired in to the Republican Party, but clearly it is also wired into the Democratic Party. And so what we see is the dynamics in Congress now are you have most of the Republican Party and a decent chunk of the Democratic Party that often fronts for corporate interests. And you have a smaller crew of progressive Democrats and one or two on any given issue, a couple, maybe a handful of Republicans on specific issues. On the Sackler Act, for instance, there are some Republicans who say they support that bill. But basically, when we look at the two parties, it's easy to say, oh, there's Republicans and there's Democrats. It's actually no. Like, when it comes to corporate matters, it's usually most of the Republican Party and a decent chunk of the Democratic Party, and then a much smaller crew of folks in Congress who are willing to challenge that agenda. And the Chamber of Commerce kind of exemplifies that. Big ties into the Republican Party and now growing ties into the Democratic Party.
Wow.
David, I know I say it a million times, but following your reporting really helps people understand what's actually happening in Washington, not just the theater, not the like silly reasons that cable news makes up as to why Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin are doing things, but you help to understand how things actually work, who are the key players involved that you may not have even heard of, and how it can be that, you know, people who are truly villains, like the Sacklers, can end up with their fortunes intact and with members of Congress ultimately siding with them. So thank you for that reporting. We're, again, very excited to be partnered with you guys. And I know our audience has been really excited to hear more of what you guys are up to over there.
Absolutely. We support you 100%. Thank you really much, David. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks to both of you. Really appreciate it.
Our pleasure. And we'll have more for you guys tomorrow. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.